The Archdiocese of New York converting church properties into thousands of affordable housing units. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
Two people broke into this Queens church and stole hundreds of dollars from the poor boxes. I'm Emily Drewby, and coming up, you'll never believe what one of the suspects did after entering the church.
A major push to strengthen the Catholic faith brings a Vatican bishop to join hundreds in the Brooklyn diocese. Plus, a twist in the migrant flood heading to America. Now, some Mexicans are lining up with President Trump. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The Catholic Church is dealing with New York City's affordable housing crisis. Cardinal Timothy Dolan and other Catholic leaders are working on new ways to transform church properties into living spaces. Currents News' Timothy Harfman is in the Bronx with the latest. Tim.
Liz, this complex behind me includes over 100 new affordable units. It's called the St. Augustine Terrace, and it's one of several properties being converted. Residents in this Bronx neighborhood are praising the church's initiative. The Archdiocese of New York has a new plan: convert church properties into living space for low-income families.
For us in the church, this is a no-brainer. It's a duty.
New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan, church leaders, and elected officials tackling the city's affordable housing crisis at St. Augustine Terrace in the Bronx. This is where Catholic Charities developed over 100 new units. The Cardinal blessed the new facility, which used to belong to Our Lady of Victory Church.
We will continue to partner with so many dedicated allies in building and hosting affordable housing.
This site is one of at least 6 church properties being converted into low-income and affordable housing within the Bronx and Manhattan. The initiative will create nearly 2,000 units over the next decade. That doubles the 2,000 units developed over the last 40 years. Monsignor Kevin Sullivan heads Catholic Charities in the New York Archdiocese.
In this day and age when housing is such a challenge, when affordability is such a challenge, that the church is doing this is an affirmation of our continuing reaching out.
At St. Augustine Terrace, a third of these new units will be set aside for adults with mental illnesses, where they'll receive services from Catholic Charities. The city's First Lady, Charlene McCray, stressed the importance of treating mental illness.
For New Yorkers living with serious mental illness, it means stability and the freedom that comes with living independently, surrounded by the support that they need to stay healthy.
Residents living around this new complex are applauding the church's effort.
That's needed. The prices on the apartments, it's off the chart. I mean, for people with limited income, I mean, that's why there's so many homeless people.
I think that's good, because there's a lot of people homeless in the street and they refuse to stay in shelter because the living condition in the shelter is bad.
It took nearly a decade for this 12-story building to be completed. One resident told me he moved in last October and loves his studio apartment because he has his own personal space. In the Claremont section of the Bronx, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Back to you, Liz.
Tim, we can see there that complex is complete, but what about the other projects?
Well, Monsignor Sullivan told me that 2 new buildings are currently under construction. As for the others, they're in the planning stages, but the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese looks to have them completed within the decade. Liz?
All right, Tim, thank you very much. Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens is also hard at work setting up affordable housing. Since 1975, more than 4,000 units with supportive services have been developed through the Progress of People's Corporation. Anyone interested must apply in writing to CCPOP Management at 191 Gerolman Street, 8th floor, Brooklyn, New York 11201. Now specify the kind of residence, senior, family, or single room housing. This address is also available on the Currents News website, currentsny.tv. Police are searching for 2 people caught on camera in a brazen robbery inside a Queens church. Currents News' Emily Drewby has the latest on the investigation in an exclusive report from St. Helen Church in Howard Beach.
Valerie Casillo, a devoted parishioner at St. Helen Church in Howard Beach, devastated when she heard her church had been burglarized, unsure how to explain the incident to her young kids.
My children, when they serve a funeral as altar servers, they give the children a little tip, and my children always put it in the poor box.
Casillo's family heartbroken, especially her young daughter who had recently put her money into the donations box.
And she said she was really upset because they broke the 10 Commandments.
Police are now on the hunt for a man and woman who burglarized the church around 3 a.m. Thursday. The first suspect entered through the unlocked outer door. The suspect then walked up to this second set of doors, which were locked, and forcefully pried them open. Then the female walked inside. Father Francis Cola Maria, the pastor, picked up on what she did next.
As she entered the church, she did this.
After making the sign of the cross, surveillance video shows her walking over to the church's 4 shrines, lifting up the collection boxes at each one and removing the cash, making away with an estimated $400. Father Cola Maria says it's not just about the money, it's about those who made an offering.
They have a personal relationship with these saints whom they pray to. And then for someone to come along and violate that by stealing what they have offered to the angels and saints, not good.
The church has increased security. Police are searching for the pair who took off in this red 4-door sedan. As for Father Cola Maria, he suggests the suspects learn a lesson from another pair of thieves.
The thieves who entered this church should take advice from the thieves that hung on the cross with Jesus on Good Friday. As one thief turned to the other, he said, "Have you no fear of God?"
In Howard Beach, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
The NYPD is asking for the public's help in identifying the thieves. Anyone with information should contact Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS or send a text to crimes, then enter tip 577. A Chicago priest is returning to his ministry after being cleared of all wrongdoing following an allegation of misconduct involving a minor. Father Gary Graff was found not guilty by a Cook County judge. The Illinois Department of Children and Family Services called the allegations unfounded. The Chicago Archdiocese conducted its own investigation and also cleared Father Graff. A major event celebrating the patron saint of parish priest John Vianney gets underway tomorrow in the Brooklyn Diocese. The holy man's incorrupt heart will be on display. The relic has resisted decomposition for more than 150 years. The Knights of Columbus is sponsoring the U.S. pilgrimage called Heart of a Priest. People will be able to venerate the relic tomorrow at Cathedral Prep Seminary in Elmhurst between 10 a.m. and 2:30, then at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston, Queens between 5 and 7:30. On Wednesday, the Heart of a Priest will be at Xaverian High School in Bay Ridge between 2:30 and 3:30. The relic will also be at St. Thomas Aquinas Parish in the Flatlands between 7 and 9:30. Bishop DiMarzio will celebrate Mass at 7:30. The saint's relic was part of a procession at St. Patrick's Cathedral ahead of Cardinal Dolan's Mass yesterday. John Vianney was born in France within the 18th century. He was known for hearing confessions for up to 18 hours at a time. Cardinal Dolan thanked the sponsors of the U.S. tour.
Thanks to the Knights of Columbus for hosting the relic of the incorrupt heart of St. John Vianney. I so appreciate the Knights of Columbus initiative so that they're inviting all Catholics in the United States to pray with and for our priests in union with the relic of St. John Vianney.
Cardinal Dolan encouraged all Catholics to pray to the saint for the renewal of the Church. Pope Francis is criticizing the weapons of war and countries that sell them, including the United States. The Holy Father was answering questions from an Italian high school delegation on Saturday when he discussed wars in Yemen, Syria, and Afghanistan. He said if they didn't have weapons, they wouldn't wage wars. The rich, Europe and America, sell weapons to kill children and people. The United States is cracking down on Iran's military, labeling the Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. The move is likely to spark retaliation from the Islamic State. Omar Jimenez reports on what's developing into a major international story that could impact American troops.
The administration is designating Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization.
With this designation, the Trump administration is simply recognizing a basic reality.
It's the first time the United States has ever given that title to part of another government.
We're doing it because the Iranian regime's use of terrorism as a tool of statecraft makes it fundamentally different from any other government.
Iran is reciprocating, officially designating U.S. military operating in the region as terrorist groups.
Most previous administrations, including military and intelligence officials, concluded that the gain was not worth what we would risk.
These tensions are the latest tensions between the two countries, but not the only. It comes almost a year after the U.S. pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, reimposing sanctions on the country, just weeks after the U.S. recognized Israeli control of the Golan Heights, and on the eve of Israel's presidential election. Iran's foreign minister tweeting, "Another misguided election eve gift to Netanyahu, another dangerous U.S. misadventure in the region."
It's basically adding a label. It's not actually adding new sanctions. So it doesn't get you much, but what it does get you potentially is provoking a retaliation from the Iranians.
The United States' terror designation for Iran's Revolutionary Guard officially begins April 15th. In Washington, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
In a matter of hours, Israelis will vote in an election that could have a huge impact on the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting to stay in office. The election is set to be the closest the country has seen in years. Final polls show Netanyahu's main rival, Bent Gantz, with a slight lead. If Netanyahu wins a fifth term as prime minister, that would be a record. In the United States, alarming news tonight about children and teens admitted to emergency rooms because of suicidal thoughts or attempts. The numbers are soaring. Natasha Chen reports.
In 2007, more than 500,000 children between the ages of 5 and 18 went to the emergency room for a suicide attempt or for suicidal thoughts. 8 years later, in 2015, that doubled to more than 1 million. Nearly half of them were between ages 5 and 11.
Unfortunately, the results from this study are no surprise.
Mental health experts agree there are multiple reasons for this.
There's tremendous pressure on young people now to be popular. How many friends do you have on Snapchat, Facebook? There's increase of cyberbullying.
Also, pressure to get into increasingly competitive schools. Parents and guardians are stressed too.
Look at how they're modeling how they deal with stress, how much are they tuning out or drinking alcohol at night.
And there aren't many resources for children who are struggling. Data from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry shows the majority of the country faces a severe shortage of providers, fewer than 17 for every 100,000 children. Meanwhile, experts suggest some strategies at home.
Let your child fail. Let them take risks so that way they learn how to deal with it and they learn how to be successful on their own.
Limit social media and build in quality time with family. In Washington, Natasha Chen, Currents News.
Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens maintains a call center to help prevent suicide. The call center is at 718-722-6001 and has trained specialists able to immediately assist someone in crisis by linking them to a mental health professional. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 provides support for people in distress and for their loved ones. There's a lot more news headed your way. Why people, including a Vatican bishop attending a major event in the Brooklyn Diocese, were told to be bold. It's a special place devoted to the most important book ever written. Now the Bible Museum in the nation's capital is getting a big boost. The flood of Central American migrants is stirring up discontent in Mexico. The reasons pushing some Mexicans to call themselves Trumpistas. A Vatican bishop is heading back to Rome to tell the Courier what he learned in Brooklyn this weekend. He and hundreds of others attended an important event aimed at making the church stronger. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Be bold and build up the Catholic faith, a missionary commitment that was at the core of a catechetical congress held Saturday at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston, Queens. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio headed up the event, which brought together Catholic leaders from across the diocese, the nation, and the Vatican. They spoke to hundreds who had come to hear ideas about boldly strengthening the church.
They have to have courage. They have to try to do things maybe that they're a little bit afraid to do, or they have to reach out beyond the limits.
The Congress was the latest step in the bishop's drive to inspire a new evangelization. Less than 2 years ago, he created a new office to boost the growth of Catholicism, the Secretariat for Evangelization and Catechesis. Some of the top issues it focused on are parish life, faith formation, and the family. Theodore Musco is in charge.
We need to be a diocese of welcome. We need to be a diocese that invites people to share in the great wisdom of the church, but also to remember that we're all on a journey. So join us wherever you are.
Roseanne Barber is active at her church, St. Gregory the Great in Crown Heights.
I know that I am walking the walk of Jesus. I know that I'm doing what he's calling me to do.
Roseanne is originally from Trinidad and Tobago. She arrived in the United States in 1975. Immigration was something the Vatican's evangelization bishop Franz Peter Tabarts van Elst talked about while he was at the Congress.
The migration challenge can be an occasion for evangelization. So we are the universal church in different languages, in different cultures, but we are able to find together, to stick together in this unifying faith.
Bishop DiMarzio celebrated Mass and also presented an award to Father Frank DiCiano. He's the president of the Paulist Evangelization Ministries and has spent a lot of time in the Brooklyn Diocese, helping to set up evangelization committees in a number of parishes.
If we keep presenting ourselves as an organization that you got to belong to, rather than a family that welcomes you, people aren't going to be hear that because it's not the time for big organizations, but everybody needs to be connected.
Lisa Sampson, Director of Religious Education at Our Lady of Light Parish in St. Albans, gave the Congress high marks.
We're always looking for new ways to enliven our programs, change according to how society and the needs of the people in our parishes, and it came away so far with a lot of really good tips and ideas.
Bishop Tabarts van Elst is taking what he learned at the Congress back to the Vatican's Council on Evangelization, where the ideas could be used to create policies for the universal church. In Douglaston, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
After the Congress concluded, Bishop Tabarts van Elst joined the people of the diocese to pray for a renewed church. The Vatican bishop celebrated Sunday morning Mass at St. Sebastian's Church in Woodside, Queens, and reflected on the best way to promote the faith within the U.S. The bishop said he was amazed by what he experienced in the Diocese of Immigrants.
What has impressed me most is that you are able to build a community in so many cultures, languages, customs and so on, and to give the witness of unity to the world.
The church's pastor, Father Kevin Abel, said that as far as he was aware, this was the first time a delegate from Rome had been sent to St. Sebastian's. The museum dedicated to the most important book ever written, the Bible, addressing the complex intersection of faith and science. The Museum of the Bible is receiving a big infusion of money to create a new exhibit about the relationship between the two. It will be divided into 6 sections, answering pressing questions like how the universe began and if humanity exists alone. U.S. bishops are urging Washington lawmakers to do more to protect Venezuelans fleeing their country. Violent unrest and a severe shortage of basic essentials in Venezuela have forced millions to leave the Latin American nation. The bishops want the United States to grant them temporary protected status for 18 months, arguing existing political instability makes it unsafe for Venezuelans to return home. Tonight, more on the flood of Central American migrants heading toward the U.S. The influx, a big reason President Trump threatens to shut the border with Mexico. The surge also has some Mexicans concerned about what's happening in their country. The so-called Trumpistas side with the president. Paula Newton explains.
She was once part of the caravan, but Mayra Lopez Garcia says she now thanks God and Mexico for letting her stay right here. We're fine here, she says. That's why we're not thinking of going to the United States. We'll stay here. Granted a temporary visa, Mayra makes a living making tortillas. She says she escaped poverty and violence in Guatemala and is now counting on Mexico for her future. Tens of thousands would like to join her. Mexico's borders, both to the north and south, are overwhelmed with migrants, mostly from Central America, who've already been waiting months just for a chance at a new life in the United States. So if we end up with a chance to stay here in Mexico, we'll take it, says Carlos Gomez from Honduras, and work hard to make a living. And this is where things are starting to get complicated for new Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. He had promised a more humanitarian policy for migrants, and that's being challenged now, not just by President Trump, but more Mexicans too. Even people like Aaron Mendez, who helps run a migrant shelter near the Texas border. I think one of the solutions is to change the immigration strategy, he says, which now lets in all the undocumented migrants. And President Trump claims his ultimatums are the reason Mexico is now apprehending more migrants on its southern border. The Mexican government counters that it has a long-term plan.
So Mexico is being put under a lot of pressure from both ends.
You're being squeezed.
We're being squeezed, exactly. And I think it's unfair to say that we are not trying to be part of the solution, because I think that this administration has done a lot of the things that can be done to help this humanitarian crisis.
Mexico says it plans to make history of the caravans with economic development in southern Mexico and Central America. To do it, though, it will need much help and patience, not just from the Trump administration, but Mexicans themselves.
That was Paula Newton reporting from Mexico City. Mexico's migration agency reports over 1,200 undocumented immigrants were apprehended by Mexican authorities during the first 2 days of April. Still to come on Currents News, what's happening in Ireland today, 8 months after Pope Francis visited there during a period of upheaval. No one came to see this baby. The story of what a nurse did about that. We'll be right back. Pope Francis made a lasting impact in Ireland even during troubling times. 8 months after the Holy Father traveled to the Emerald Isle for the World Meeting of Families, the Irish ambassador to the Vatican says the pontiff remains a widely admired leader.
I think it re-emphasised the affection Irish people have for Pope Francis. I think there may be problems with the institutional church on such issues as clerical sex abuse, which has been a terrible evil, as the Pope himself has said it. But people warmed very much to the Pope.
The Pope visited Ireland during a turbulent time after the passage of a national pro-abortion referendum and while the Irish Church was under scrutiny over clerical sex abuse. Finally tonight, a case of unconditional love for a baby abandoned at the hospital. Little Giselle was born at Franciscan Children's Hospital in Brighton, Massachusetts in 2016. The infant was born premature and faced health complications because her mother used drugs while pregnant. No one visited the child for several months, that is, until she crossed paths with pediatric nurse Liz Smith.
A few of the nurses at Franciscan Children's approached me and said, "Liz, have you met Giselle?" And I said, "No, why?" And they said, "She needs a medical foster home, and you two are the perfect pair." A week later, literally, Giselle crossed my path in a stroller, and we locked eyes, and that was it.
Smith formally adopted Giselle last October. The nurse is now speaking out about her child and says Giselle's health is stable and continues to improve. And she is just beautiful. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.